All right. So this is Moon in the sixth house in Gemini. So first, let's talk about how um, it's a concept I came up with called event to energy to event concept. And what that means is the sign and a house make up an event, even if there's no planets there. So if you got an empty house, things are still happening in that house. The so event to energy to event. So uh, example of an event could be is in this case you put Cancer with the seventh house. You combine these two together, and an event happens. The energy, the planet that rules that house is the energy. So what happens is the planet turns the event into an energy. Whatever the planet, here we're talking about the moon. So the energy is feel, feelings, thinking, defending, reacting, protecting. See, I had to think about this. The reason the moon is the defend in us when we have to defend is because you have to look at the nature of where the house, the moon, originally rules, which is the fourth house. That's the house where everything in that house you have to defend. You have to defend your home front, your country, your culture, traditions, your peace of mind, your emotional well-being. That child, that um, vulnerable child in us all. See, the fourth house and the moon, they are not just our mother, like not our not just our actual mother, but it's the mother, the nurturing mother in us, and it's also the vulnerable child in us. So that's the energy part. So with all of those things, the moon turns that event to okay. So now it's the energy. We're talking about the moon and the other events. See, event to energy to event. The planet transforms the event of where it came from, like Cancer in the seventh house. Boom, the event's there. Moon transfers that event into feelings, thoughts, defend, protect, everything that the moon is. So now it's the energy, and it expresses this energy in the house that it sits in as a completely new event. So in this case, it's a Gemini in the sixth house, and so this energy is expressed as an energy, as a feeling, whatever it is, whatever the planet is, and it plays out through the sign and the house it sits in. So you put this together, you would say a Cancer seventh house event is transformed into a feeling, and the feeling comes and expresses itself in the sixth house as a sixth house Gemini event. So that's the event concept. And then, let's see what we got. Okay, how to interpret, it's my notes right here. How to interpret sign in a house as an event. So let's use the Cancer seventh house example. To understand this, what you do is you look and see Cancer. Okay, Cancer, you look to see what house Cancer naturally rules in the natural order, zodiac order. So Aries first house, Taurus second house, Gemini third, Cancer fourth house. What happens is That sign, Cancer in this case, acts as a decorator. Look look at it as an actual house. That's the most simple way, the most deepest way you can look at it. The houses are like they're actual houses, and in different, you go and open the door to the house, and it's like on the outside, it'll say seventh house, like that's the, like, had the welcome mat, like when you walk to it. So look at the houses like that. Seventh house. You open the door to the house, and you got different rooms, right? And in different rooms, different things are happening. Those are the themes of that house. Like, so when you go to a room, you got, so for seventh house, it'd be relationships, or just let's say your relationship. Any relationships is seventh house. Any place where you go to form a union with another entity is a seventh house. What or whoever it is. So uh, uh, that's the event. That's the room. So the room is titled. Let's say, imagine the room is actually titled uh, your relationship. Cancer is the decorator. Remember, Cancer is going to decorate that room with its tools. Its tools is fourth house things, fourth house themes. Whatever the fourth house is going on there, Cancer brings it to the seventh house and decorates the seventh house with the fourth house furniture, pictures, and whatever you decorate a house with, or decorate a room with, whatever you decorate a house with. So for this, so example would be, this is how you do it. You say, okay, Cancer seventh house. Now you go into that room. Now you actually go. The houses are actual. Look at them as actual places we go in our lives. So you'd say, go to a place where your relationship is at play. Okay, boom, I'm there in the relationship room. Okay, here's my relationship. Cancer is going to bring, for example, let's say the fourth house is peace of mind. To decorate that room, Cancer is going to decorate its relationship with peace of mind. It's going to have to do with your peace of mind. Your relationship is going to affect peace of mind. That's how you could do it. Another example would be seventh house. Let's go to another room. Let's say this room is the room of how you perceive others. See, it's all perception. This chart, that's why the ascendant is, to me, like the most important part of a chart, because that's how it's how you perceive everything. You have to perceive something a certain way for it to become real in some kind of way in your life. Hang on a sec. Okay. So, um, yeah. So that's what makes things real for us. Our perception of the things. And so seventh house is the perception of other people. You go to this house, go to this room. Now we boom. Go to a place in your life where you perceive other people. That's the seventh house. And Cancer is decorating this house. So example would be, let's say the fourth house, like I said, is the vulnerable child in us all. That child that needs to be fed and covered up and rocked to sleep and pampered, just nourished, protected, and defended. So that nurturing child, okay, and other people. So it's bringing the nurturing child, that sense of the nurturing child, into its perception of other people. So this seventh house, like you either view people as needy, because a vulnerable child, they need, right? They need all those things I said. Or you view them as like people that can take care of themselves. That's the mothering, that's the nurturing mother I was talking about. That's also the fourth house. So this is your perception. That's an example of how to interpret a sign in a house as an event. Okay, so let's give an example. Let's put it all together. Let's say you want to go in the room of, again, relationships, your relationship, and Cancer is right there. So this decorator, the Cancer, um, let's say we're talking about the furniture we want to put in that room is inner peace, not inner peace, our innermost self. That's the fourth house as well. Your innermost self. That is something, again, you got to protect. You have to defend. You have to nourish. So in these people's relationships, their innermost self will be affected. And what you do is you look at the planet that rules it. That's what we're talking about, the moon. So let's say let's say you feel good about in your relationships, whatever is coming from that event. Your innermost self has been affected in, let's say, a good way. So you have a feeling. That's the energy. Remember, event to energy to event. And so, based off of your your innermost self being affected by relationships, in relationships, you feel a certain way. Now, the event of your innermost self is turned in your relationship has turned into a feeling. That's the energy I was talking about. And it takes this feeling and expresses itself in the sixth house as a Gemini sixth house event. And then you put it all together and you come up with the dopest shit. And you would say the feeling, right? The feeling is expressed of the innermost self being affected by relationships. The feeling is expressed as joy. For example, let's just say joy. And is expressed in a Gemini a sixth house thing. So you take the same concept of the decorator and the house. Gemini decorates the sixth house. What is the sixth house? Your habits, daily habits. Then Gemini, what house does it naturally rule? The third house, communication. So Gemini decorates the sixth house with third house themes. So Gemini is bringing its, it'll say something like, how you could put it is, I'm gonna put communication in that room of habits. I'm gonna sit it right there and just gonna sit in the in the room, titled daily habits. So imagine communication as an actual chair. So Gemini takes this chair and puts it in this room of daily habits. So communication becomes a daily habit. That's an event. So now you got your event, you got your energy, and now you got your event. Let's put it together. Our innermost self is affected in our relationships. Based off this result, whatever the effect is, a feeling, it turns into a feeling. Some kind of feeling. It's going to be a diverse feeling because Gemini is the sign of diversity. So when it comes to your, innermost peace being affected by relationships, you express diverse feelings as a daily habit. That's how you do it. Let's do another example. Okay, let's say, okay, let's go to another room in the seventh house. How you perceive other people. Cancer rules the fourth house. Let's use um, um, emotional well-being, right? Let's use that. That's the furniture. That's the picture. It's gonna put this picture of emotional well-being right here in the room and labeled how you view other people. So how you view other people affects your emotional well-being, your emotional security and stability. Based off of this event, like say, okay, we're going to a place now. The houses are actual places. Okay, you actually, yes, okay, actually are perceiving somebody else or other people in general. Like let's say you in a Walmart and you just got a second to just, I don't know, people watch. That's also the seventh house. And you people watching, and somehow what comes from you observing other people, it affects your emotional security about how you feel about, not how you feel about yourself, but whether you're at peace, your emotional well-being is good, bad, neutral. It'll be affected some way. From this effect, a feeling is then expressed. So you got the event feeling, it turns into an energy, which is something related to the moon. Let's say it's the energy of defend. So based off your perception of other people and the effect it has on your emotional well-being, you either feel like you got to be either, it affects your sense of defense, like you got to be more defensive because of your perception of other people, or less defensive. It just it the sense of defense is what expressed it. Like, man, I gotta guard myself. So it's the energy defend. Okay, I gotta defend my emotional well-being, and that's taken into the Gemini in sixth house as an event. An event could be, let's go to another room in the sixth house. Let's say it's your job environment. That's also the sixth house, your job environment. And Gemini's there. Gemini's the decorator. So Gemini brings something from the third house there. Let's say Gemini is, or the third house. Let's use uh, short distance trips, like in the local community, like this your Walmarts, gas stations, the restaurants in the community. That's the third house. So, which means your job environment, like you have to travel short distance. You have to make short distance trips or go somewhere in your local community, like different places in your local community. That's the job environment. So that energy of defend, like, so you feel like because of how you perceive other people and the effect that it has on your emotional well-being, you have to be defensive, like you have to defend yourself in your daily job environment. We already know what the daily job environment is, going different places. So you have to defend yourself in your daily, somehow, some way. You gotta, the sense of defending yourself is expressed in your daily routine, your daily, your job environment of having to go to different places, go to these short distance places around a local community, environment, neighborhood, town. Whether it's something like apparently that you got to defend yourself against or not is another question. It's all about how you perceive things. You perceive, seventh house, you perceive other people, and as you know, from your perception of the people, your emotional well-being is affected. This is all perception. So you perceive this placement as like you have to be defensive somehow, in some way, whether it's defending your physical body, your innermost self, your emotions, um, your peace, whatever. You perceive how you look at as a means for like you have to protect yourself in your daily environment, in your job environment. So like for example, like let's say somebody is a Amazon driver, like a delivery driver. That's a beautiful example because they go around a little area, a town, and they go to these different places. They go to these different houses in this town. Displacement, they be like always on the alert because they feel like, man, other people, um, you know, other people affect, how I look at other people. I know it affects my peace of mind. So I gotta act defensive. I gotta act defensive. I have to defend when it comes to work and being in this van and going all over. This is my job environment. Going all over town to these different houses. I have to defend myself, my peace, my you know, that home front. You have to defend that vulnerable child. So this example. So that's how you put it all together. And finally, I want to use. Let's look at the moon as a noun. See, before we was using it as like a verb, so action is taking place. That's the energy. That's the event to energy to event concept. Now we're using it as a noun. So we'd say something like the mother. We talk about the mother, your actual mother, and that mothering nature in us, that nurturing mother in us. So we'd say, um, like when you were little, or that place where early in childhood where you had to be under your mother's care is where your mind is being molded. That's the time where your mind, your moon that you're gonna have for the rest of your life is being molded. So the moon, which is your mother, and the mothering nature in you, and it's also that vulnerable child in you, is it sits in the sixth house in Gemini, right? We already know Gemini. Sixth house is our daily routine. Gemini is the, let's use the example of short distance trips, like a lot of short distance trips. You go here, 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 boom. So an example, what you would say is your mother, especially when she, like when you were under her care, had to do a lot of in her job environment and her day and her routine. It was a lot of short distance trips. Like she would, example would be like you see the mother or somebody who acts as a mother. It could be a father, but because they have the child, they're acting as that. They're acting as that moon. They're acting as that mother, that nurturing mother. But let's just say mother. Uh, like you'll see them in the WalMarts with their kids or with their kid, little kid, and this kid, you see him doing this shit, looking around, messing with shit, picking up shit. Whatever is going on in that environment is programming your moon. It's informing your moon. Through these things is how I identify the nurturing mother in me. So your mother will tell you, "Oh, get over here. I need to, don't go over there. Somebody will snatch you, or come over here." No, they gotta protect you. Through this is how the mothering nature in you is informed. This is where and how it's interpreted. Through these environments, through these kind of things. And that's the vulnerable child. So the vulnerable child is actually you. So when you go to that space, when you go to that place of the vulnerable child, the source is always from those environments I just talked about. When you're with your mother and her daily routine, even if she's not at work, whatever her daily routine, her daily habits are, it's going to consist of communication. It's going to consist of short distance travel. It's going to involve, involvement with neighbors, the neighborhood, also third house things. That's the place you go when. That's the place you refer to when you go to that place of that inner child, because the moon sits in the sixth house, which means, like, if you want to go back, for example, if you want to go back and try and, like, you want to find out, okay, why do I act the way I act? Why do I act the way I act? That vulnerable child in us. You can refer to the sixth house things. That's an example. And a lesson to take from this. It's many lessons, but do not over attach yourself. This is any moon anywhere, but for this example, don't overly attach and be affected so much by Cancer 7th house things that you root yourself in those things. You become attached to them, and everything that the moon is ultimately decided by Cancer 6th house things. For example, let's say your sense of belonging, Cancer. Cancer was the fourth house of home. Wherever you feel, that place you go, well, okay, I belong. That's the fourth house. And that sense is coming up to the seventh house of relationships. So your sense of belonging is affected by your relationships. The lesson is to not over-identify, don't over-attach yourself to the result of that. Don't be so affected by what happens in your relationship to where it ultimately decides your sense of belonging. You belong no matter what goes on in your relationship.